Welcome to Telesur. I'm Carla González in Quito, and this is from the South. Venezuela's Vice President Delcy Rodriguez announced there are 4 new cases of COVID-19 in the last 24 hours.
We have 159 cases, and 52 of them have recovered. That means a percentage of 33% of the people recover. That's a positive number. When we compare it with other countries, 34 people are in medical center, 31 are isolated at their homes. We insist that people who are infected and are at home to stay home, to use masks inside their homes, to designate one person to their care, and avoid contact with other members of their family. For cases where this cannot be applied, we have special protocols in place, and they can be in quarantine in a public health center.
And through a humanitarian channel established by the Venezuelan government at migration points, thousands of Venezuelans are expected to be repatriated from Colombia due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Colombia's foreign ministry reported that 600 Venezuelans have been able to return to their country. Many were evicted from their residences because they could not pay the rent. The quarantine decreed by the Colombian government prevents migrants from earning income to buy food and survive. The Venezuelan government has complied with all health protocols to prevent infections in the repatriation process.
We come scared because we do not know if we will catch the coronavirus.
From one moment to the next, they kick us out like some dogs. Some of them couldn't even collect their clothes, their personal things, and without money on the street. And this situation is quite difficult for us to go back to our country like nothing.
Over the past few days, representatives of the YU people in Colombia have left their lands to protest over the quarantine imposed due to the COVID-19. While they use their rituals as a form of protection, they say a lack of drinking water and food has forced them to take to the streets in protest. Their farms have been affected by the unexpected quarantine imposed without any support from the government. As they live from farming, fishing, livestock, breeding, and from selling handicrafts, the YU people say they will not be able to survive a quarantine without state support. Also in Colombia, an explosion in the department of Cundinamarca has killed 11 people. The blast at a coal mine in the municipality of Cucunubá left 4 others injured and poisoned by methane gas. Official sources state that the explosion was due to the accumulation of methane causing the collapse of the mine and trapping miners inside. And amidst the struggle against COVID-19 in Venezuela, President Nicolás Maduro sent a letter to the people of the United States with a message of solidarity and a call for peace. The letter was read out by Foreign Minister Jorge Arreaza.
No somos tan diferentes.
We are not as different as they want to make us look with lies. We are people looking for a more just, free and compassionate society. Let's not allow the particular interests of a minority led by ambition separate us. We, as our leader Hugo Chavez once said, share the same dream. Martin Luther King's dream is also the dream of Venezuela and its revolutionary government.
On Saturday, U.S.-based magazine Newsweek revealed that President Donald Trump's move to indict senior Venezuelan officials for alleged drug trafficking is a pretext to divert attention from his mismanagement of the COVID pandemic. According to the magazine, senior Pentagon officials confirmed that the operation announced a few days ago, allegedly to fight drug trafficking and to contain the COVID-19 pandemic, was planned a few months ago to put pressure on President Nicolás Maduro. The plan, however, was not supposed to be made public until May, but the White House rushed the announcement in order to distract citizens from the COVID-19 crisis. Now let's look at a report on the Trump administration's attacks against Venezuela.
The Trump administration's recent announcement of so-called anti-drug operations in the Caribbean Sea off the coast of Venezuela is a new chapter against the Bolivarian revolution that is trying to fight against the COVID-19 pandemic.
We are at a moment where the pressure keeps on growing. It seems that the United States is realizing that since we are in a different and weak situation because of the pandemic, Of course, it's difficult for Chavismo not step in because of the pandemic.
1 week ago, Venezuela denounced a coup attempt planned from Colombia by deserter Clever Alcalá with the direct participation of Guaidó and the U.S.
Venezuela seems to be in a zone that is crucial, right in the border of the conflict, and that is why we see such behavior during these critical times. It's no coincidence what happened with the ship. It's no coincidence what happened with Clever Alcalá. It's no coincidence that the United States is doing this now.
After the plan was revealed, the United States included in their most wanted list authorities from the Venezuelan government. They also included members of the armed forces trying to justify the deployment in the Caribbean.
The strategy of calling them terrorists seeks to try them without due process, of taking them as hostages, like what's happening in Guantanamo, where people's rights are not respected.
And most recently, Venezuela denounced an attack by supposedly tourist ship that sank a Coast Guard vessel. The boat, which had Portuguese flag, disembarked in Curaçao without explaining the attack.
We received information that 106 people are inside the boat. There's a higher power outside of Curaçao that won't let authorities inside the boat to identify people inside the boat. This confirms our theory that this boat was being used to bring mercenaries in order to perform surprise attacks against Venezuela's military units or to achieve certain political objectives.
A few days later, the United States offered to lift sanctions if the government agrees to a so-called transitional government. The Bolivarian government and its international allies, like Russia, have rejected the proposal. These moves come in the middle of a worldwide crisis caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, where some countries are trying to protect their people, while others are trying to take advantage of the situation at the expense of thousands of lives.
Coming up, Pope Francis holds a Palm Sunday Mass in the Vatican by himself due to the COVID-19. More details after this break. Welcome back. More news at this hour. The government of Argentina has given a detailed report on the COVID-19 outbreak in the country. Let's listen.
In Argentina, there are 1,451 confirmed cases, with 98 new ones reported on Saturday. 56% of cases have affected men and 44% women, with an average age of 45 years old. Almost half of all cases are of people who traveled recently. 34% of cases are of people who were in close contact with a previously confirmed case, and 8% are due to community transmission. The rest of the numbers are still being investigated by experts.
Brazil has become the worst affected country in Latin America by COVID-19 as it reported 1,000 new infections in the past 24 hours. The health ministry said the nation now exceeds 10,000 cases of the pandemic. The management of this emergency by President Jair Bolsonaro has been strongly criticized. Most recently by Brazil's Lawyers for Democracy Association, who filed a complaint against Bolsonaro at the International Criminal Court for crimes against humanity. Barbados has recorded its first death related to COVID-19. The Minister of Health and Wellness, Jeffrey Bostich, announced on Sunday 56 positive cases and 6 recovered patients. He also announced that a 100-person team of intensive care specialists from Cuba will arrive in Barbados to provide support for medical teams who have been on the front lines of treating those with COVID-19. The Caribbean Development Bank will offer some $140 million in aid to the nations of the region to address the consequences to the economy by the COVID-19 pandemic. According to the CARICOM Today website, the CDB approved the mentioned financial aid to be used by the member countries. In the United States, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo says the state's death toll from the COVID-19 outbreak has climbed after 594 deaths were reported over the last 24 hours.
Number of deaths is up. That's the bad news. It's 4,159. and we pray for each and every one of them and their families, and that is up, and that is the worst news. But the number of deaths over the past few days has been dropping for the first time. What is the significance of that? It's too early to tell.
The British Prime Minister has been admitted to a hospital 10 days after testing positive for COVID-19. A statement by his office said the admission was a precautionary move that had been taken on the advice of his doctor. Boris Johnson, who is 55, has been quarantining his Downing Street residence since being diagnosed on March 26.
Hi folks, quick update from me on the campaign against coronavirus. First of all, in my own case, although I'm feeling better and I've done my 7 days of isolation, alas, I still have one of the symptoms, a minor symptom of I still have a temperature, and so in accordance with government advice, I must continue my self-isolation until that symptom itself goes.
Meanwhile, the British Health Secretary says people who are not complying with measures put in place to stop the spread of the coronavirus are risking the lives of others.
I say this to the small minority of people who are breaking the rules or pushing the boundaries. You're risking your own life and the lives of others, and you're making it harder for us all. We're not planning any changes to those rules imminently, but we do absolutely require people to follow them, and we have had these questions about the boundaries of the rules and people pushing the boundaries. But as Jenny just set out, there's very clear reasons that we set the rules as they are, and we want people to follow those rules. And of course, there's now the police enforce against them.
Italy has registered its lowest day-to-day increase in deaths of patients with the new coronavirus in more than 2 weeks. The country's National Civil Protection Agency and the Coronavirus Special Commission reported that 525 deaths have been recorded in the last 24 hours. Nearly 16,000 people have so far died from the virus in the country.
Today we're recording 525 new deaths. Is the lowest number of deaths since 19 March. The total number of recovered patients is 21,815, with an increase of 819, more recovered than yesterday.
The curve has reached its plateau and now has begun to go down, and luckily also the number of deaths has started to go down, which is an extremely important data. But as we know, those are events that refer to 2 weeks ago, so this is a hint that the whole system is bringing a significant slowdown of infections.
And authorities in Italy have reported that more than 11,000 medical personnel have been infected with COVID-19. According to the National Institute of Health and the Association of Doctors, 73 doctors have died from the COVID-19 so far. And the number of health practitioners who have contracted the virus was almost 10% of the official total of infections.
I can understand those who look death in the eye every day, who are on the front lines, who work with someone who maybe is infected. Then a few days later you see him in an intensive care unit or die. It's an indescribable condition of stress, unbearable.
During a Palm Sunday Mass in St. Peter's Basilica, celebrated without a congregation due to the coronavirus pandemic, Pope Francis dedicated his homily to love and service. For the first time in history, Pope Francis celebrated Palm Sunday alone, following COVID-19 regulations limiting large gatherings. However, millions of people joined him via internet, radio, and television.
The tragedy we are experiencing summons us to take seriously the things that are serious, and not to be caught up in those that matter less. To rediscover that life is of no use if not used to serve others, for life is measured by love. May we reach out to those who are suffering and those most in need. May we not be concerned about what we lack, but what good can we do for others?
One of the most affected countries by the pandemic, Spain, has reported its third consecutive daily decline in the number of people dying from the virus.
In addition, the total number of deaths is 2,418, with 674 deaths yesterday. And with respect to people discharged, the communities inform us a total of 38,018 people who have been discharged, which means around 29% of cases that the emergency centers have communicated to us have been discharged.
After this break, Greece puts another migrant camp under quarantine. We'll tell you why. Don't go away. Thank you for joining us again. Research on the coronavirus has revealed that people over 60 and especially those over 80 are more vulnerable to severe infections. Authorities in Mexico have taken some steps to reduce this risk. We have more details in this report.
60 years old, Antonia Flores continues working. She does it in the midst of the epidemiological emergency declared by the presidency due to COVID-19. It is known that people her age are the most likely to get sick, but the lack of economic resources doesn't allow her to stay at home.
The ones that have the chance of surviving have money, but because we live day by day, we have to work.
In Mexico, 16.1 million people are considered elderly. Data of the National Institute of Statistics, Geography and Computing reveals that 6 out of 10 people over 65 years old live below the poverty line. Facing this situation and the health emergency, the government has decided to provide an universal pension that will benefit more than 8 million elderly people.
This will translate into immediate help for over 8 million elderly people.
In this way, the beneficiaries of the program will receive the equivalent of $219 to cope with coronavirus quarantine. The health authorities warn about the risks for this sector of the Mexican population.
We need to be very aware, not only about yourself, but your family, your community, the society as a whole, and then the government too.
The authorities have taken a number of measures to prevent the spread of the coronavirus in the country.
En especial las personas mayores de 60 años. No hay que temer.
They are the most vulnerable because a significant portion of them already have health problems that weaken their immune system against opportunistic infections such as the coronavirus that in regions like Europe has caused thousands of deaths. 95% of the victims are people over the age of 65.
Greek authorities on Sunday announced that a second migrant camp has been placed under lockdown restrictions after a 53-year-old Afghan migrant tested positive for the novel coronavirus. The Afghan man and his family reside in the Malakasa camp, which is located 45 kilometers north of the capital, Athens. Authorities last week placed a migrant camp in the country's northern region under lockdown after 23 asylum seekers tested positive for COVID-19. A team of 12 Chinese medical experts has arrived in the Philippines to help in the fight against COVID-19. The team was received in the capital, Manila, by the country's foreign minister. It is made up of experts in various areas, including respiratory health, intensive care, hospital infection control, nursing, integration of traditional Chinese and Western medicine, and microbiological testing. They also deliver medical supplies, including 30 ventilators, 5,000 protective suits, and 300,000 medical masks. Let's move now to China, and for the latest we have our correspondent, Iramsi Peraza.
Hola, ¿qué tal, colega? Un placer saludarte también a toda la audiencia de Telesur. Pues China experimentó hoy un ligero aumento de los contagios por el nuevo coronavirus con respecto a la jornada de ayer y hoy se reportaron 30 nuevos casos, 5 de ellos de transmisión local y los otros 25 de personas que llegaron del extranjero. La Comisión Nacional de Salud informó que estos 5 casos de transmisión local se registraron en la sureña provincia de
province and its capital, the city of Wuhan, continue to report no new cases of infection. On April 8th, the quarantine imposed on Wuhan will be finally lifted after 2 months, thanks to the improved situation at the former epicenter of the outbreak. Authorities have also taken measures to ensure food security, especially the production of grains to mitigate the negative impact caused by the COVID-19. As we know, China has helped 120 nations try to deal with this pandemic, and it was recently announced that China will send aid to Syria, consisting of large quantity of medicines and much-needed medical supplies.
That was a report from our correspondent Iramsi Peraza in China. And the number of COVID-19 cases on the African continent has reached 8,500, with almost 400 deaths reported. South Africa has the highest number of cases, currently at 1,585 cases, with 80 of them confirmed during the past 24 hours. At least 25 new deaths were reported in Algeria on Saturday, bringing the number of deaths to 130. South Sudan has also confirmed its first case of the disease. The former Libyan rebel leader Mahmoud Jibril has died from the COVID-19. He was 68 and died in Cairo, where he was hospitalized for 2 weeks. He was the leader of the Alliance of National Forces Party, which overthrew former leader Muammar Gaddafi back in 2011. And we end with encouraging news. And we end with encouraging news, as we announced it. They're from Syria, where patients infected by COVID-19 continue to recover despite the difficult conditions in the country. The Ministry of Health announced the recovery of 2 of the 16 confirmed cases, but they also reported the death of 2 patients. Over the past decade, the nation has suffered a prolonged war and heavy unilateral coercive measures imposed by the United States. Despite this, it continues to make progress in the fight against the pandemic. There's hope that even nations under war are doing all they can to fight this virus affecting us all. So if you can, stay home. We'll keep you informed. Remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website, telesurenglish.net. And be sure to find us on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Carla Gonzalez. Until next time.